שלום, ברוכים הבאים לעוד פרק של פוליסה בארץ הפלאות, והפעם יש לנו אורח נכבד ואני מיד אעבור לאנגלית. הפרק הולך להיות באנגלית. האורח שלנו מגיע מעולמות הידע הנרחב בתחומו, ומצפה לכם פרק חם, מעניין, ותשמעו אותו כשאתם במיזוג אוויר כמו שצריך. So welcome to another episode of Policy in Wonderland, and today I have the honor to host Barry Lynn. Hi, Barry. Thank you for having here.
Thank you.
So Barry is from Whether It Is, a new startup. Can I say new startup or?
It's newly started up again, so to speak.
So
We're in our starting stages, trying to expand from being a local company to provide weather services to Israel to being a global company. So this is where we're at.
So we are going to focus about weather, insurance, and climate tech. Okay. And Barry, what is your position in Whether It Is?
I'm currently the chief science officer.
And you come in, your background is from academic, right? You come
Correct.
from what you did
Right.
in the academic.
Well, I've studied a lot of different subjects. I had my degree in atmospheric science and environmental meteorology. And I happened to move to Israel in the year 2000, immediately started working at the Hebrew University as an academic position. And I sort of have a full-time position there as a researcher, where we study the effects of pollution on clouds. In the meantime, I started my consulting business in Whether It Is some years ago. And my goal was to provide valuable forecasts to clients, the kind of forecast that actually would save them money, save lives, and provide them a service that they couldn't easily get elsewhere.
And what do you think about Whether It Is? What your best solution? Let's start from the problem. As we are in the startup world, we always start from the problem. What is the problem? What is the problem that Whether It Is going to focus or is already focused, and which one is your customer?
Well, we're working now to really help companies better assess risk associated with climate change. There are those who say the climate is not changing, that there's always been risk, and we all know that.
We can feel it right now.
Yes, there are always, yes, but there's still people who say there's always been risk.
Yeah.
Look, the dinosaurs themselves died off. But, we don't want to be like the dinosaurs. As Gary Larson's cartoon showed in The Far Side, the big dinosaur standing up there, he's saying the climate is changing, but we have a brain the size of a walnut. So what are we going to do? So we don't have this brain the size of a walnut. My cat might, but my cat's not in charge of the world. So except he's in charge of our house. So basically, we should be thinking about how we can make a positive change in where we're going. We're going in the wrong direction as a society, as people. On the other hand, the solutions that are out there for immediately changing over to renewable energy and things like that are not really very realistic. They will cost a lot of money and cost people a lot of money and cause a lot of hardship. So that's just an aside, but one of the things we're trying to do is help companies assess the risk associated with climate change. And we decided to focus recently on wildfires.
Okay, let's focus about the wildfire. We heard a lot, especially the last weeks, about California. And California is a region that you have a lot of wildfire across the years, and especially that year that I think up to 10,000 fires in 1 year in California, wildfire, right?
I'm not exactly sure of the exact number, but California is prone to wildfires because it has a climate like us. It rains in the wintertime. There's a lot of vegetation growth. And then there's a dry season. And that dry season basically means that the vegetation dries out. And ironically, the more rain you have in the winter, the more likely you are to have severe fires in the summer, so long as the weather conditions are prone to fires, because you end up producing a lot of undergrowth in the forest. That undergrowth then burns relatively easily, and then it helps the trees themselves to burn.
So if I'm now a business in California or insurance company in California, or the West, or in the West, okay? And I want to predict the fire ahead. Can I use your solution? Your solution is kind of my solution.
Well, our solution is to provide companies the ability to know where current fires are going, how they will expand, how fast they will move. Our next step is basically to provide companies with the ability to understand, is the next few weeks, we're called the subseasonal forecast, is that something that you need to worry about? Are weather conditions going to be even prone to fires? And there's another additional step up, part of that, which is that you want to know what is the probability the wildfire will happen. For example,
Mm.
people light fires by accident. The electric company, PG&E, basically lights fires by accident, but because they're negligent, they don't service their wires. They have not been able to invest properly in preventing their electrical lines from causing fires. Weather causes fires through lightning ignitions. So our goal is to produce and provide companies or potential clients with, let's say, a 3 to 4 week outlook to give them time to prepare. Because if you don't have time to prepare for what's coming, it doesn't have much value to you. You basically just have to like run away or go into your basement if a tornado is coming. Once you get beyond that, the idea is to provide a more seasonal outlook, like is the coming season looking to be based upon, let's say, winter and spring weather, a
Mhm.
high risk fire season. So our solution is to provide companies with a range of information that tells them what's happening now, what's going to happen in a few weeks, what's going to happen this coming season, so that they can transition from one time period to the next and be ready for whatever is coming.
So you can forecast for the months ahead, right? So if now
Right.
I'm in January, I can forecast for to June, for example.
Well, January, a month ahead would be
A
February.
month.
But
A
right,
month, only a
a
month
month,
ahead.
let's say.
Okay.
Let's say we're providing a more specific forecast for the next 3 to 4 weeks. When if you've ever followed weather forecasts
Mm-hmm.
and they predicting, let's say, rain tomorrow, and you're thrilled when it actually rains tomorrow. But when we start talking about what's happening next week, I don't know if you've ever followed snow forecasts in Israel. Like, we actually started talking about them about 10 days in advance, and that's pretty far out. But once you get beyond 10 days, you enter a void between the present and, let's say, what's coming up in the springtime or the summertime. So our goal is to fill that gap, to fill that subseasonal gap with information based not just on like looking out the window or looking at general characteristics of sea surface temperatures or ice in the Arctic, but in Greenland, but actually looking at model data that we will produce basically like we produce tomorrow's forecast. So everything again is a probability. Even when we
Mm-hmm.
talk about rain the next hour, it's really a probability, but we want to give probabilities that, let's say, the next few weeks will actually be there'll be some kind of potential for severe weather. And then beyond that, again, we get more into like seasonal indications. But with wildfire, actually, there have been strong correlations found between, let's say, winter, spring rainfall,
Mm-hmm.
the growth of vegetation, and the potential for wildfires. And you should keep in mind that because of climate change, the frequency of that there will be hot, dry air overspreading, let's say, parts of the United States, which leads to rapid drying of vegetation, is higher than before. People don't really catch this important point, which is that when we talk about the weathers, even in Israel to some extent, you see it that we have in the summertime nice weather, westerly winds from the sea, good surfing weather, temperatures in the upper 20s to low 30s, and basically no weather at all. And then we like a couple years, summers ago, we had a couple weeks of intense heat.
Mm-hmm.
So did we move Israel? Did we move the country to the desert? No, the desert came to us. And depending upon how much energy is in the system, you get certain wavelengths, certain amplitudes of waves moving through the atmosphere. And when those high amplitude waves move, or they actually stall in certain areas, they create the potential for continued flow of air from, let's say, the tropics, subtropics into mid latitude. So much of mid latitude weather is actually because of weather often because of weather that happens either to the north over the northern latitudes, let's say far northern latitudes, are the let's say the deserts to our south or the subtropics. So when I was growing up, we used to talk about a high pressure system, the Bermuda High, that used to camp off the eastern United States and pump hot southerly winds from basically subtropics into the eastern United States. So it wasn't just hot, it was terribly humid. But without that Bermuda High, the weather would not have been so hot. So when you get these periods of very hot weather, fire-prone weather, it's in our latitudes, it's because the weather systems have migrated from one location to the other. And if you heat those areas more than we did in the past because of greenhouse gases, you end up producing hotter air or areas of much hotter air, let's say over Saudi Arabia and places like that. And then you get a weather system that moves in and brings that hot air over us. And suddenly people are terribly affected here by the weather, and it's dangerous to hike in the valleys and the deserts, and people suffer heat stroke. But our position didn't change, the weather changed. And the problem with global warming is that the frequency of these types of weather patterns are becoming more extreme. And if we happen to get a weather system that produces hot weather here, that hot weather that arrives will last longer and be more intense. So in the Pacific Northwest or in California, when they get certain weather pattern setups that linger for a long time, it's not unusual necessarily to have that pattern, although it may last longer than usual. What's unusual is that the air being fed into it is much hotter than in the past. So I believe it was last summer, there was extreme, more than 100-degree temperatures in the Pacific Northwest that went on and on and on. And even in Canada, southern Canada, there were terrible wildfires that they hadn't had before. And after they had the wildfires, there were there were floods because the wildfires burned the trees, and then there were no trees to absorb the heavy rains that followed, and there were terrible floods and mudslides.
Wow.
So our whole ecosystem is affected by the fact that we're changing the climate.
So if I go back to insurance and take all of what you just said, is I can do something like parametric insurance for insurance company or for insured himself. For example, if I have a company, a big company, or in California or in a risky area, I can look and see that maybe in the next month I will have maybe wildfire next to me, and when I will use your solution with the weather it is solution, the insurance company can predict if it will be fire or not, and then they can give me a premium, much lower premium or higher premium, according to your prediction, right?
Right. Often companies issue policies for a year. And
Yeah,
so
but sorry,
if we,
but if I do it parametric insurance, so it will depend on the occasion himself. So if it's now we are in January and I know the forecast for February, and I know January and February is not a good example for fires,
in
but
July or
July,
September,
yeah, July, September. So I, as an insurance company or as insured, I can lower my premium according to your forecast. So why should I pay the same premium in January as the same premium in July, for example?
well, you bring up a very good point, is that perhaps insurance policies for wildfire and other types of extreme weather are basically long, too long. They've been written over for a period of time, which we really have very little information. We will try to stretch our forecast out to 6 months, let's say, which would be very useful. But basically, our plan is to look for in the seasonal forecast indications of the potential for severe weather. But let's say that insurance companies would say to you, like gas prices go up and down, or other commodities go up and down. You want insurance for the next month. This is how much it's going to cost you. Now, we're not going to be issuing any policies for a year. We're going to issue short-term policies that will cover you through the year, but you've got to pay for them. You're welcome to decline them or you're welcome to accept them, but based upon our information, which we would provide to them, they would charge more or less for insurance. I don't know how practical it is, but basically insurance companies, someone said they, especially life insurance policies, which is a little bit morose, they lose money the moment they write them. But over the long term, they make money. So perhaps what we need is sort of like a different approach for insurance that will enable companies to cover homeowners or businesses based upon the information they actually have and the risk they assess.
Like a real-time data platform as you offer. Because if, for example, I can take example from the earthquake world. So if I'm a reinsurance company, I will divide it. If I take Israel, for example, I divided Israel to different parts with exposure to earthquake. So if I take Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, they will get a different premium to earthquake premium, okay, risk.
Correct.
So I can take the same thing here, but for fire, for a forecast, because the earthquake is a data based several years ago, statistic, etc. But what you offer now is something different. So if I am a reinsurance or even insurance company, regular carrier, I can take your solution and divided the country to parts according to your prediction, to your forecast, 6 months ahead, or even better, it's just months ahead, and do a much better underwriting for the customer and eventually for me as a carrier or for me as a reinsurance company.
Right. I think it's actually a very good idea and something we were trying to come up with a business model that might work. And it's a very interesting approach because, the traditional people say like the insurance company is full of traditionalists, who, they're still using paper and pen. And that's probably because, they do things safely. They know how to do things. They're putting up a lot of money. They don't want to necessarily, ironically, take risks themselves because, of course, what they're doing is underwriting risk. But if we could provide them with a different approach that actually has practical use and actually relates to the risks that we're seeing, it might actually provide them with an avenue, an approach to underwriting these policies, to be able to underwrite them and not risk the boat. Now, of course, if we're predicting a high probability of wildfire in the next month, they would have to charge a lot more. And the question is this basically an additional variable charge to the policy they've written? In other words, you buy a policy for a year, but you have to know that the policy can go up or down. I don't know how that would work, but
you can take example from car insurance. Now you have the all the pay as you not pay as you go, pay as you drive. Okay, so if you are a risky driver or not, if you are a new driver, here in Israel, you have also in the US. If you have a new driver, you can give him a premium, but it will be higher premium, and you can purchase the premium or the policy for several days. Under the 12 months policy. So you don't need to buy insurance to all the year for the new driver, only for the moment that you drive in your car. For example, if you are your son is a soldier and came back from the army and is need the car for only for the weekend, so you will pay only for the weekend. You will pay much higher premium than regular premium, than a regular premium. But now you, as an insurance company, or also as insured, you will pay the exact premium that you really need. So for your example, is like the risky driver. Once I have the high season, and when it's the low season, I will reduce my premium as insured. So eventually you will have minimum and maximum, right? You will not pay for like a double premium or something like that. But as is insured, you have a validation to what kind of premium you will pay, even on the worst scenario.
Right. The flip side, that would be that in the winter months, when the risk is low, you would pay a lower premium.
Yeah. So what is your current stage in your company? You are going to fundraising, or you are now on bootstrap? Can you tell me about this a bit?
We're in the seeding stage.
In the city?
We've already done bootstrapping. I've been bootstrapping for a number of years, and plus basically supporting the company with income from our clients. But as I said, we want to become a global company. A lot of changes here in Israel were made by the previous meteorological service, where they not the meteorological service didn't make the changes. Basically, the government changed with the based on the impetus of the meteorological service, that government agencies would only be able to obtain their services from the meteorological service of the Israel.
Okay.
So a lot of the business that we originally started out having basically has disappeared, and we've gone more in private clients. But really, Israel is, and again, I don't know why we cause the world so much trouble. We're a tiny little country in a rather large place, and we there's only so many people here, and for a good part of the year, the only weather we have to worry about is missiles from Gaza or balloons. Today is going to be sunny with a 20% chance of missiles, which is the way the weather is. Like in the United States, they have tornadoes, right? So they say there's a tornado warning. Here we have missiles. It's pretty much the same. Just one is natural and one comes from Gaza. So, or one is exported from Gaza. Does Gaza have any exports? Not really, just missiles and balloons, but maybe a few vegetables. So it's a problem. I wish it would change. So yeah, I mean, the potential is there for us to, be partners in peace, as they say, and business. Just have to have the will, or we have to have the agreement of the other side for that, of course. So we want to become. The point is, we want to become a global company, and to do that, we need to start selling globally. It's a very simple thing, but that requires an investment of resources. We have to hire the people. We have to, develop the ability to provide our services, worldwide, and it's something that requires an investment. So we've been looking for that for the last couple of years. We've been making contacts, and we hope that we'll be able to convince someone to provide those resources. Part of it is reaching the right people. We have the products. We know what we want to do. We have the dream, so to speak. We want to give people value. A weather forecast without value doesn't really have any utility. And it's
sorry to interrupt, but maybe people think about wildfire only in California, but just recently we heard about wildfire in Germany. I think, what in Germany. So on the climate situation, the ecosystem is, all the globe is changed. So don't focus now I talk to the listener, don't focus only on California or in some states in the US, but also worldwide, like a worldwide solution.
Absolutely, because look what happened in Spain, Italy, Portugal, as I said, Canada, Australia last year had a fire so large that it probably affected the weather because of all the smoke released. Wow. Smoke reflects radiation to space, which leads to a bit in global cooling. Doesn't mean that global cooling is happening. A good example of that, and where people get confused, is I'll just give a couple examples. One is they say that the global climate models predicted that we would have continuous warming from the 70s, whatever, just upward to the 30s. And there was like a so-called pause for 10, 15 years. So what that shows is that climate prediction models are not able to account correctly, let's say, for some of the interdecadal or decadal 10-year fluctuations in how the oceans interact with the atmosphere.
Okay.
But what their conclusions were was that the models were wrong, that there's no reason to worry about global warming because there was a pause. But let's think of it the other way. Let's say there was a pause in the warming, but because of us, there was a pause and not a dip. The 70s were an extremely cold decade. And if you remember in the early 90s, after there was Mount Pinatubo, which cooled the world by a degree or two. So they say, well, there was a pause. Global warming is not.
In Iceland, right? No.
Yeah, that was more recently.
Finland. Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure. Pinatubo was in South America or whatever. Not really. I have
I
to check
remember
that.
what happened in
That
Iceland.
could
Or
check.
yeah, Iceland.
There was one in Iceland, and that also may have had effect on a localized global cooling, and let's say. But the point is that to say that there was a pause means that there's no global warming does not mean that at all, because the weather should go up on average and it should go down on average. It didn't go down, which means that whatever land or ocean forcings were pushing the world to be cooler on that than normal, let's say, over a century, were counteracted by the fact that we produced a lot of greenhouse gases. So that's one example. There's a second example which I just forgot, so you'll have to ask me another question and I'll remember if I can.
Just going to wrap it, but so you tell me about your vision, whether it is vision. So it's pretty good. Just it's going to be only focus only on fires, or is just wildfires, or in your vision you see another climate situations?
Well, if we actually are able to produce good wildfire forecasts, let's say the conditions that produce wildfire forecasts, and obviously we'll be producing temperature forecasts and rain forecasts as well. So there's no reason why we can't sell the traditional weather forecast, but basically as a prediction for the coming several weeks that go along with the wildfire. For example, we're expecting wildfire conditions to be more severe. At the same time, we're expecting an intense heat wave over the Pacific Northwest or in Italy or in parts of Germany. Now, why is Germany burning? Let's say, oh, well, Germany, the naysayers will say Germany has always burned, or at least in the not always, but over the centuries, there have been fires in Germany. But when we change the climate, the potential for fires in Germany becomes higher. The frequency will become more higher. So those conditions that produce those fires are heat and dry weather. And in Germany, let's say you have rain, let's say into the early summer, and then suddenly you get a 2-month dry period where our intense heat, you've got all that vegetation that can burn. So we don't want to limit ourselves to wildfire, but we're emphasizing wildfire in terms of being able to sell risk to reinsurance and insurance companies. We have to remember that people care about the weather, but they don't always want to pay for the weather because either they feel they can't do anything about it, or their interest, their financial risk is not that high. So what's important for us is to find the clients like reinsurance companies that can actually will have a financial stake. If we are able to produce a high temperature forecast for, let's say, here in Israel, it's now the second week of August, and we can tell the electric company in the first week of September there's going to be a heat wave. So they might be willing to pay for that, but municipalities, how much will they pay to know they need to put in shelters? So these types of forecasts are expensive to produce, and they need the resources, the income from clients who actually have the financial resources to pay for them.
Okay, Barry, I want just to say thank you for your time. How people can reach you via LinkedIn or email?
I have LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn is probably the best way. Yeah.
I will put your LinkedIn on the episode description. And thank you very much, and good luck.
Thank you.
You have a very excellent mission that you need to approach. So good luck to you and all your team. Thank you.
I just
go ahead.
I mentioned that I'm sorry about the little traffic in or out. I wasn't expecting it.
No, it's okay.
The daughter came in looking for the wife.
We couldn't predict it. So
No, we couldn't predict they're gonna, well, no, pretty much I can predict anything in this house will happen. Doesn't matter if I tell them I'm in a meeting or whatever. Either a cat will come running through with a dog chasing after it or whatever, but just the way it is.
this is
But
life.
yeah, it makes it interesting. I really am glad that we could talk through Zoom because, it's strange because prior to the coronavirus, which took such a terrible toll on people, everyone was just traveling everywhere. And it was a lot of time spent in the car. I would come
Yeah.
to your studio, and somehow Zoom came at the right time and Microsoft, I mean, these things were there, but it made it so much more possible because, I'd like to go to wherever you're located. Where are you sitting and which
Rehovot.
Rehovot? I mean, I like to visit Rehovot, right? But I would have had to take half my day to do it.
Yeah, exactly. I had a meeting during 11 o'clock this morning. It's supposed to be on Tel Aviv, and I move it to the Zoom because I saw that I need to do only this meeting in Tel Aviv. So I will spend like half day in Tel Aviv only just for 1.5 hour meeting. This is no even reasonable here, especially when you have the Zoom solution. So yeah, it's pretty
Right.
good.
You just have to remember, though, that some of my best ideas came from other people. So if you don't actually put yourself in a position to be around people and to hear what they have to say, pretty much I think we'll all be pretty lack creativity. I mean, creativity is something that happens from a group. And even scientists, the famous scientists you hear about, Einstein and G. Murray or whatever, and Heisenberg, they all were part of meetings and they argued and they saw each other and they talked to each other. So we need to be careful to create those types of conditions and not just sit in our bedrooms or
You're damn
office.
right, because all the small talk, there is from the small talks, you have a lot of creativity and a lot of new ideas that came from those small talks and not just the formal talks. We
Right.
have
They
less than a minute. We have less than a minute, so if it will turn off, just know the reason.
okay.
So thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Very glad that we eventually could
Together.
arrange it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you and
I
good luck.
apologize for that.
It's okay. I feel good.
All right.
Yeah. Bye
Thank
bye.
you again. Bye.